Now, I work at the Financial Times, which, as you can tell from the name, cares a lot about finance. And although I trained originally as a cultural anthropologist, I've learned that money makes the world go round, in the sense that if you don't look at where money's going, you can't really understand the power patterns. If you only look at where money's going, you can't understand very much either. But you have to think hard about money to not just make sense of the world, but to go forth and change it. So this panel, which Claudia is actually going to moderate, because I unfortunately have to go off to in a moment, is all about how to turn the very important call to arms you've heard earlier into tangible action on the financial front. There is a very esteemed group of panelists who are going to comment in just a few moments on what can be done tangibly in terms of action plans to really turn these words into action and really make sure that money really does make the Hispanic world go round in a way that benefits everybody. But before we do that, we're going to use the same format as we used in the last panel and ask everyone to vote on which are the really important key issues to do with financial empowerment that are really going to move the needle in terms of getting the Hispanic community moving. As before, you can see that there are 3 options up on the board. One is financial literacy, which is obviously incredibly important. It's something I'm passionate about personally, coming from the Financial Times. If we don't have a financially literate audience, no one's actually going to read us. Second one is access to capital, people actually getting hold of the money they need to fund their operations, which of course has been incredibly uneven in America in recent years. America's drowning in money for some, is not for others. And then last but not least, pay equity, making sure that people have the right kinds of, making sure people have fair wages at work. So let's start by asking people which of these 3 they think is the most important. And since you heard earlier that there is a collectivist tradition in terms of communication within the Hispanic community, maybe they should switch off the moving targets, because that may affect how everyone votes. But I might say this looks like a rather more clear-cut and clean result than your average US election right now. Great. Well, I think there's a very clear conclusion here, which is that the issue that people are most concerned right now is financial literacy. People making sense of their money, people making sense of the math behind the money. As you just heard, one of the key aspects on the education side is making sure that mathematical training and the mathematical language is absolutely center stage. But the question really is, how do we go about actually getting higher levels of financial literacy, understanding, awareness, and above all else, empowerment and the Latino community? What are the key steps that need to be taken going forward? Who would like to start? Do you want to start with me for a few minutes, or you can start with Claudia, who's probably going to be a lot nicer to you? Yes, but anyway, let's kick off. Maybe you can say briefly who you are, and then what tangible action step you would like to see to start delivering financial literacy.
My name is Edgar Carrion. One of the things that I've found working with small businesses is there's a missing connection between institutions that provide these resources and the community, meaning the education and how it's delivered. We've mentioned how trust is so important to our community, and so how are these institutions building trust to educate our community, to prepare us to get access to capital, but also to obtain that literacy that we need.
And in terms of actually, seeing what do you actually want institutions to do?
Well, I work with a lot of small businesses, and they have a hard time knowing what is required prior to entering those buildings. And so a lot of the times they don't go simply because they don't think they qualify, regardless of whether they have good credit history or if they are prepared with a proper business plan.
Okay, so key actionable steps. Don't wait until the Hispanic customers come through the door There has to be moves by the financial industry to actually reach out into the community before they even come and explain to them what your bank can do for you.
Yes.
Great point. What about
Abigail Golden Vasquez with the Aspen Institute Latinos in Society program. There's all different kinds of financial education. My colleague over here talked about business. Latinos need to understand savings tools, and we need culturally competent education that reaches Latinos where they are. But if you don't have enough money to save in the first place, that's a big challenge. And there are some tools out there like California Choice, which are actually providing savings tools as an opt-out for Latinos and Latinas that don't have access through the work that they're actually in to a 401k or to a savings plan.
Interesting. I must say, given that very striking set of research earlier about the degree to which influencers can play a key role and social media is critical in disseminating opinion and trust, interesting question to ponder is whether, in fact, influencers right now in the Latino community find your friendly local telenovela celebrity star could actually be doing something in this respect. But that's an interesting point.
Thank you.
Someone nodding there.
Mark Madrid, Latino Business Action Network, LBAN, in collaboration with Stanford Graduate School of Business, championing the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. And our lane is entrepreneurship, Latino and Latina entrepreneurs across the United States. We've achieved the most successful mobilization of U.S. Scaled Latino and Latina entrepreneurs in U.S. history. And what we're finding is the how is that you've got to get to know the bankers before you need the money. And so that's what our scaled entrepreneurs who've graduated from our scaling program at Stanford have done. So that the how is we actually introduce our graduates of the scaling program to capital providers, and ranging from the debt providers all the way to the alternatives. So over the course of the last 4 years, we've had over 1,000 matches, and that's a difference maker.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. So you're targeting a higher level of Latina entrepreneur, but that's also incredibly important because, let's face it, they will be many of the future wealth creators and role models for the wider community to follow.
That's right. You talked about an influencer group. So we have a group of 584, and it'll be 5,000 by 2050.
That's fascinating. Wow. I think we should get a few whoops and cheers as well to really make this a properly energetic and dynamic event.
Yeah, Victor Arias, Managing Director, Diversified Search, and also chair of the organization that this gentleman runs. And the creation of wealth is the key for the entire demographic, Latino demographics. There's some cultural mores against maybe the creation of wealth, but we have to emphasize that that is the path to creating more leadership, more jobs. And so that's what this program is that Mark mentioned. There should be a real focus in on financial literacy for how Latino businesses get more capital and that, because that's the key, is it's to scale these businesses. So in my mind, if you do that, then everything else starts to fall into place.
Okay, well, that's another great point. I mean, there's a certain consistency coming out here. How about our last two panelists?
I'm Dr. Betty Uribe. Yeah. Can you hear me okay? So I am a woman. I am a C-level executive in financial services for over 20 years, and I am an entrepreneur. So I am your target here.
Well, in fact, you're more like the role model. Everyone wants to look and know what's your secret right now.
Let me tell you
cloning you and sending you out to every school to
thank you so much.
Tell all the next generation of girls you can do it.
So some of what I personally have done, I think, are things that are proved to be successful. So I'm going to just talk about those. Teaming up with 11 nonprofit organizations in California to put together a system called TEAM: Tools, Education, Access to Capital, and Mentoring. We have the resources in our neighborhoods, and it doesn't take a bank to do it. Every single one of us can do this, especially C-level executives of large companies, teaming up to provide the tools, the education, meaning the financial education for business owners. When a business owner comes to me and they need to be turned around, they want to know what it is that the people that provide the financial, say the bankers or the equity partners that want to bring in some equity dollars into the company, they want to know, what are you doing with your money? What is your plan? What is the pro forma? You don't have to know how to put all of this together, but you do need to know how to talk to the people that are going to be investing into your company and how to use their language. It's much like when I came from Colombia, I need to learn the language, right? It's the same thing. You go to a financial services institution, an insurance company. The other piece is that there are other accesses to capital. Toyota just gave $1 million to a company in Northern California to do an app that's going to do something big. So there are different companies and there's different access to capital that we need to educate our people on. It's not just the financial services institutions. There's different access to capital. Also, there's intergenerational wealth transfer that is happening. If we take a look at our demographics, with our median age being 11, is what you said, Claudia. If you think about the businesses that are going out, the business owners, 95% statistics show that 95% of business owners do not have a generational transfer strategy. 95%, that means that only, if you look at all of us, very few of us have a generational transfer strategy. That's something that we really need to do, and we can team up with the nonprofit organizations in our local markets across America to be able to do that. And then the last thing is negotiating skills. You want higher pay? Let's teach us negotiating skills. I was the highest paid executive at my company. That's because I learned how to negotiate. So let's learn how to negotiate and get us the right pay.
Well, I think, Betty, at that point, absolutely everyone who's working in an educational institution right now, or any institution, will be working out how to get you into their doors and actually give a lecture to all the staff and the students. But anyway, George.
Hi, George Hornick. I chair an early stage venture fund called the Seed Lab. And I would be focused much more on B of the survey earlier, access to capital. I look at things through the lens of venture capital, right? And the problem, pretty obvious, the lens that gets focused on the Latino community is more of a microscope. There's $250 billion plus of venture that will be deployed this year globally into ventures, and it is maybe 1% that goes into Latin ventures. And there's about $500 billion of dry powder waiting in the wings. So my thought is, how do you get a higher percentage of that dry powder? The 250's gone, okay, got that. So how do you get access into that? And I think earlier what Mark mentioned is the way. I would suggest that creating a mechanism where you can build off of some successful entrepreneurs who have gone through the gauntlet of venture and beginning to build this network. I think many firms in the venture world would like to have access to that group. They can see the value of the population, the Latin population. Obviously, it's nearly 20% of the country. It's 12% of the GDP. All of those reasons, and you need to be able to add and build on a network like that. So I'm thinking, for example, of a young entrepreneur that I know well. His name is Pier Paolo Barbieri. Started something called Uala. Just hit a $1 billion valuation. It's a mobile payments system. He's a 32-year-old, be perfect to join into that organization. And there are many, many others that I could identify and talk to. And that's how you work. You already have a foundational platform, and you keep going from there, build that network. Believe me, the venture firms are always looking for more deal flow, okay? And this community hasn't had it in the normal way that other communities have had. So that doesn't mean that it's not out there. It just needs to be connected. And I think that's how I would look at it.
Do you think, any of you, that the mainstream banks get it at the moment?
I think they are starting to get it, but they don't. There was just a report that came out that said Black and Latinos continue to get less money than they ask for. They're less likely to receive a loan. and they're more likely to be rejected than their white peers. And they've gone back and they've said these were credit-worthy loans that were rejected. But at the same moment, I'm working on the Forum for Latino-Owned Business Growth with my colleague here from LBAN. And banks know that this is the future, and they are trying to invest in Latino business growth and trying to come up with solutions. There's actually regulation that prevents them sometimes from doing it, and there's a whole host of alternative financial options, and we need to get those into our community. People don't know about community development financial institutions that support smaller businesses on the way to scaling. There's a lot of different opportunities out there for different businesses, but we want to see more Latino-owned businesses scaling. We're 14% of the entire business ecosystem. Only 3% of our businesses make $1 million or more in revenue. We have to turn that around urgently as a matter of national priority, not a nice thing to do for Latinos.
Right. As you said, it's partly about getting out into the community before people even come through the door.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that she was saying, the average Hispanic-owned business does under $500,000 a year. So right. I think I really do like the idea of the comment about transfer of wealth, but which wealth? And I think that there's a lot of work that we need to do prior as far as education goes, and really understanding how we build networks that can actually connect to the community. And one of the things that I thought about, since we're talking about action, is how can we have trusted organizations, for example, like We're All Human and others, that can vouch for local action groups so that we can build trust.
Right,
Is
exactly.
that a possibility?
I mean, as you just pointed out, as we heard earlier from Rich Edelman, local is really the source of much of the trust at the moment. Yeah. What about, though, influencers? Should we be looking to influencers to not just talk about, immigration issues and react to the many challenges, but to take up a proactive agenda and talk about issues like financial literacy? Should we be looking to schools if the demographic is so young to try and spread that message, not just to school kids, but their parents too?
Well, that was a layup to our influencers who have graduated from our scaling program, who represent the top 2 to 3% of the Latinx entrepreneurial ecosystem because they earn over $1 million of annual gross revenues. That's the group that will become 5,000 by 2050. And so we have a mantra within that group to build cohesion. It's do business with each other and get business for each other and share your success stories. I agree with Richard, and we agree with Richard, that business has the highest probability to affect change and influence a narrative. So we're asking them, gosh, if you got a good deal with Wells Fargo, who's one of our leading funders, then publish it out to our app-based alumni portal. So that's what they're doing. And it's also inspired a competition, a healthy competition with our capital providers. There's the likes of Stripe Capital and PayPal that are now looking at past transactional behavior to determine, in effect, a credit score for a future line of credit. So I think that's really exciting.
That's a fascinating idea. Go tweet about your bank loan.
Yeah.
Or put it on TikTok if you want to get the right demographic. Shows how old I am. We're almost out of time, but one or two quick comments.
And I would add just to the influencers, we need to know all this data that's up here. That's how we all become influencers, so that we go and we can spout out all the information about what Latinos contribute to this country. It's an imperative. We have to know these facts, and we can start early at the school level and to make sure that our kids know what they can be proud of. And so we need to make sure that we have those that information handy for everybody. Everybody needs to spout that out.
Two quick. It's on. Is it on? Okay. So 2 quick things. Elevating the Latino voice. We need to get those influencers out there. I'm a partner in a Latino Business Speakers Bureau, and some of you here are part of it. And we need to be able to get our voices out there. And if you are shy a little bit, stop it. Raise your hand and let's go out and talk about what we're doing. And then the other piece, the social media. I have us on social media right now. We're on Facebook Live right here with Danny. And why am I doing this? Because I'm educating the people that are following me. I'm an influencer on social media, and everybody that is on my social media is getting educated right here. We all can do this. We can't wait for somebody else to do it. We have it right in our hands. Just take it upon ourselves and go out and elevate each other, buddy up with each other, and say, hey, let me tell them about you so that they can promote you, and you tell them about me so that they can promote me, so that all of us can get elevated. It's going to take all of us really working together as a team.
Right. Well, I think it seems like a great note on which to end. I think this panel could actually go on for another hour at least. But bottom line is, money matters.
Yes.
Talking about money, being open about money matters even more. And right now, you have a chance to use social media to make sure the Hispanic community really understands why money matters. So, good luck. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.